All right, we reported earlier that a meeting of the ANC's National Executive Committee taking place this weekend is expected to focus on the Israel-Hamas conflict. Let's try again with political analyst Sandile Swana. Sandile, I think we have you loud and clear both ways right now. South Africa's support for Palestine has always been there, just like the US support for Israel has been firm. In this case, unlike the Russia-Ukraine conflict, do you agree with me? It seems like everybody had already chosen a side, essentially. Those alliances were very clearly delineated.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Francis. There are people who are taking sides. The governing ANC in South Africa has taken sides. And I would still expect that the DA and others would also take a different side to the ruling African National Congress in South Africa.
My first question to you earlier was a response, and I don't know if you heard her, from the Zionist Federation in South Africa, saying South Africa should be careful because the world is supporting Israel. I'd like you to just analyze that statement. And is there any concern here that we could isolate ourselves politically again on the global stage if we support Palestine?
I don't think that the world that we're in today is really a world that one should really worry too much about the so-called isolation. The reason I'm saying that is that South Africa is a member of BRICS, and that BRICS is clearly drifting away from the United States and the NATO forces, NATO alliance, in any case. And I think trade relations and all sorts of things are going to be renegotiated over the next 10 to 20 years. So isolation must not mean that you are isolated from USA NATO, and you say you are isolated from the world when you are isolated from the US NATO alliance.
Yeah, I guess those divisions are just being highlighted, but like you say, they're already groupings. The US, I mean, I want to ask you about South Africa, but first, very quickly, the United States has not even called for restraint from Israel. The Geneva Conventions talk about protecting civilians. It talks about starvation being used. Will that further potentially erode the United States authority on the global stage?
Yeah, on the question of Israel and the United States, for instance, standing clearly on the side of Israel, that is a long-standing position that really the United States and the UK actually helped to form and then maintain the state of Israel. And the Arab states have sort of moved toward BRICS. Some of them have joined BRICS. So the weight of the United States over the next 10 to 20 years, we expect it to dwindle on the international stage. Yes, certainly this move, rather than a move that says, what is the solution that is fair to all human beings who live in traditional Palestine, taking the side of Israel decisively as they have, will weaken them on the international stage.
Looking at our response then, we didn't support many in the United Nations in condemning Russia, and that condemnation was based on international law. Government now talking about international law being contravened by Israel. Is there any contradiction in our response to these two conflicts?
I think that there could possibly be a contradiction, and the way I would account for the contradiction would be to say probably South Africa by now realizes that there is a rebalancing of international forces. You don't always have to, certainly on the side of the ANC, you don't always have to be seen to be supporting any position that the United States is supporting. So, in as much as they appeared to be unclear and wishy-washy on the Ukraine issue, things have moved on, and I think it is becoming clear that everybody has got to be brought to the negotiating table, including the United States.
Finally, I mean, we're heading into our own election year next year. Will the ANC's stance garner any support given South African sympathies for Palestinians, those sympathies among the general population in South Africa?
I don't know the extent. I have serious doubts that where you stand on the Palestinian question is going to win you or lose votes in the black community. In the white community, the ANC is not going to gain votes by supporting Israel. So, but in the black community, it's neither here nor there. It's neither here nor there. Among the black intelligentsia, yes, you will gain support, but generally in the actual mass of the voting body, the Palestinian question is neither here nor there.
Sandile, before we let you go, just give me a sense of what you're expecting in coming days. It looks like Israel will go in to Gaza at any moment now. Many asking, what after that? Well, what happens next? What happens even once Hamas is crushed? It's still a pretty messy situation.
Yes, Hamas is not the state of Gaza, if we're to have anything like that. Hamas is an organization, it's a movement that even has bases in all possibility outside of the Gaza. And the Gaza is a very small street. When people fight there, they fight into the ocean. So Hamas would have probably, even its leaders are not living in Gaza. So when they are going to go in there, they are just going at best to introduce a state of emergency. And bear in mind that Hamas was born around 1987 in the Intifada, those long day-to-day struggles with the Israeli army. So you would expect that some form of Intifada is going to develop in Gaza and in the West Bank.
And you expect that the fears will be realized that this will become potentially much bigger than just Israel and Hamas. Lebanese civilians, we know, are concerned that their country will get involved. Many border nations, the Arab world is watching very closely.
That all of us are missing is that there will never be peace in Palestine before the land question is resolved, before people find a way to say how do the so-called Jews and the so-called Arabs allocate space to each other and live in harmony with each other. That is the central question. The actual physical fights are of little consequence until you resolve the land question.
All right, thank you very much, political analyst Sandile Swana. And we'll be focusing a little bit later on specifically the claims by our government department that the law, international law, has already been broken. Let's just give you a sense of where we are right now. The fate of hundreds of thousands of civilians in Gaza is unclear, as Israel has suggested that a major offensive can happen at any time. It extended the deadline. That initial 24-hour deadline was then extended for 6 hours. That window has closed. And just looking at the latest death tolls, Israel vowing to crush Hamas after it killed 1,300 people. That's the latest count. And in revenge bombings thus far, the Palestinian Health Ministry says that more than 2,100 people have been killed in Gaza.